Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast for Anxiety and OCD. Today I want to talk to you about when OCD looks like oppositional behavior, because a lot of times it's missed and we see difficult behavior, we see difficult kids, we see opposition, manipulation, and really what we're staring at are hidden compulsions. So last episode we went into OCD meltdowns, and if you haven't listened to that, check out episode 414 first. But I thought this was a really good supplement on the heels of that episode to talk about, in particular, what oppositional behavior looks like, because that's not always a meltdown. It can be just really stubborn opposition. And when we have kids with OCD, sometimes those behaviors are misunderstood. And sometimes, and we'll talk about this as we get into this episode, they want you to misunderstand it. Why? I'll tell you in a minute. But before we get started, I do want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode, because NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and they're available in the US and outside the US. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is the right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. You also don't want to miss my survival tools for parents raising kids with anxiety and OCD free series. That is coming out very soon. In fact, it's coming out next week. I had to stop and pause and look at my calendar because this is being recorded like a month and a half before it's actually coming out. But for you, because you're listening to this in real time, it will be out next week. I get so much positive feedback from this free series that I do twice a year. And even if you've taken it before, parents take it over and over again because they like the reminders. The live classes are different each time. And I give you concrete tools to help you and your child with anxiety and OCD, no matter where you are in the journey, whether you've been doing this for a long time, whether their foot is firmly on the brake, whether you've tried everything, or whether you're just brand new to all of this. I've had parents from all sorts of situations reach out to me after taking that free series and let me know how much it's helped them. And that's what I love about it, is that it's really universal and it can help so many people, no matter where you're at. And it's free. And we get to hang out for a week and a half, get to be in my series pop-up temporary Facebook group, get to watch the videos, which are on demand, so you can watch them whenever you want. And then I stream live bonus classes to answer your questions, go into more detail, talk about how to utilize these skills in 3 live bonus classes. And it's all on my series website, so you don't even have to be on Facebook if you don't want to be in it. The Facebook group is just a bonus, and I would love to see you there. So you can register for free at atparentingsurvivalseries.com. All right, let's jump into today's topic, which is oppositional behavior versus maybe hidden compulsions. Why does OCD sometimes look like defiance? I think there's a couple of reasons. One is a lot of times our kids are so stuck in compulsions or so stuck in their head that they don't know how to communicate that this is OCD. Really, verbal skills go out the window when people are in a panic mode. And so they may not be able to articulate that they can't move forward or they can't do what you're asking because of OCD. That's the first reason. The second reason, and these are not mutually exclusive, is it's embarrassing. There's shame around it. So they don't want to tell you that it's OCD. They don't want to maybe prove you right. I feel like that's what goes on at my house. Is it's never their mental health issues. It's always just because they don't want to do it, or it's boring, or leave me alone, and it comes off as this snarky, defiance, and they much rather me perceive it that way than to admit and give me the credit. This is how I perceive it, that I'm right and that they do struggle. I have one child with a lot of pride and will always be like, it's not because of my mental health struggles. It's because I don't want to. But I could if I wanted to. It's not a problem. I could do it. And I'm like, all right, well, go do it. No, I don't want to. We get stuck in this loop. And sometimes insight does come afterwards where there's, an admission of, yeah, that actually is really hard for me, or that was harder than I thought it was. So sometimes our kids are just ridden with shame and embarrassment, and they don't want you to know it's their OCD. They'd rather you label it as difficult behavior or opposition than to say it's OCD. So that is another reason that a lot of times our kids will double down on the defiance. The last one that I just want to mention is sometimes they think that you're going to make them do something or talk about it or discuss it with their therapist or go into therapy or do exposures if they admit that they're stuck or they're having a problem because of OCD. Instead, they rather it, again, be just opposition. I'm just being a typical oppositional kid, and you can deal with me in a typical oppositional sort of way. That's preferred for a lot of kids, surprisingly. I would think not, right? Like, I would not want you to treat me like I'm being, an oppositional kid. I'd rather you treat me like a person who's having a struggle, but not every kid wants that. And a lot of kids are really not consciously aware of what they're doing anyway. This is all kind of a subconscious thing that's happening that is operating below the surface. So what does this look like? Let's talk about what this can look like. Let's say your child, I'm just going to give you examples, but it could literally be anything. When they're either stuck, can't move past something, or don't want to do something related to OCD, it can come out as oppositional behavior. And it's hard because they are still kids and teens, and so they do have oppositional periods or pushing boundaries. Like, that's developmentally somewhat appropriate. And so it is hard to sometimes flesh out what is OCD and what is them just being a little stinker, because sometimes that's true. Or, it's not just always OCD. So hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have a better idea of how to gauge what is maybe just typical difficult behavior in opposition and what is possibly OCD. So here's some examples. Let's say your child refuses to shower or bathe or brush their teeth. That can seem like maybe developmentally appropriate pushback, because how many parents in general have kids that don't want to shower, have poor hygiene? We have to kind of bother them and get them to do it. That is developmentally appropriate for various stages of development. But if your child has OCD, it might look like defiance or laziness or even developmentally appropriate avoidance of showers, when in reality, some kids avoid showers for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes kids get stuck in showers, and so once they go in, they have so many compulsions that they're stuck for hours. There are some kids that once they're clean, they have to stay clean because they don't want to get recontaminated, so it adds this extra stress and pressure, and so they avoid showering. There are kids that have a lot of just right OCD themes where things have to feel just right, so they can get trapped in the shower doing rituals until it feels just right, and they know they just don't have the time for that or the energy for that. It seems too much. And there's also people who think that the showers and the bathroom are contaminated, so they avoid that. And this can go with brushing teeth as well. You have kids that have to brush and brush until it feels just right. You have kids that feel like the toothbrush is contaminated because it's getting germs on it from the toilet. You have people who avoid the bathroom altogether because it's a germ fest. I'm just giving you many different flavors of OCD and why a child might look like they're being defiant in going to the bathroom. I once had a child that had moral OCD and didn't want to see herself naked. Felt like that was a sin, felt like it was her being a bad person. And so taking a shower was very triggering for them. So as we go through these, we want to ask our kids, what's the biggest struggle when you take a shower? Or walk me through when you take a shower. What's the hardest part of it? Now, if they're feeling shame and they don't want to admit it's OCD, you're probably not going to get anywhere, because just asking a question in a different way isn't going to move the dial. But if they're just not communicative about OCD, or they don't even realize to some extent that it's OCD, that question can be a little window where they might say, it just takes me so long to take a shower. And you say, well, walk me through how you take a shower. And you have to watch your tone, because how you say and ask these questions can make a difference between them feeling defensive and giving you a defended response, or opening up. And so if you say, well, tell me what you do in the shower, you're going to get them to be closed. If you say, I totally understand that. Walk me through what your steps are in showering. A little bit more of an empathetic tone. So that's just an example when it comes to showering, bathing, the bathroom, brushing their teeth. You can have kids that won't get dressed and appear to be really difficult about their hair or their clothes or the rituals of how they get ready. And so you might think, oh my gosh, like just get your clothes on. And they won't put their clothes on. They won't get dressed. And that could be for a lot of OCD reasons. When you have just right OCD, clothes don't feel just right. And so you're going through clothes, like shirt after shirt after shirt. Or you have people who have to like tie their shoelaces and then untie them and tie them again to feel balanced on both sides. These are just examples. But you can have people who have huge meltdowns over your request of just go get some pants and go get your shirt and pants on. Or go get your sneakers on. Huge meltdown. I don't want to. And I remember actually my daughter has sensory processing disorder, and I remember big meltdowns around clothes and shoes for that reason. So it's not always oppositional behavior. It could be lots of different mental health issues, and exploring those are really important. Another one is homework and school tasks. And this is tricky because it's really common for kids to seem like they're rebelling, or they have a lack of motivation or procrastination, and they just don't want to do it. And we can parent that in a very typical parenting way and just be like, if you don't do your homework, then, no electronics until it's done, which is fine, right? That's a parental approach. But if we're missing the fuel I'm always talking about the fuel that is the fuel line to the fire that is making this problem perpetual and continual. If that's OCD, then, slapping discipline or consequence on top of it only adds to the pressure. It doesn't make it better. And that's what you'll find for all the things I'm talking about is when you add discipline to these things, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. It makes it worse. It creates more panic because it's not purposeful, intentional opposition. It's fear, or it's discomfort, or it's stress. And so you've got kids who need to write and rewrite and read and reread until it feels just right with homework. You have kids who are triggered by different homework assignments and the content of it, especially when it comes to science and history, where there could be talk of germs, or in history, talk of things that are triggering for moral OCD or the fear of death, lots of different things. And so you might have kids that have the need for everything to be perfect in their homework and overwhelmed. And so they just don't want to even start it or see it. So again, asking these questions of, I understand that homework has been hard for you. I can gather it's been hard because you definitely avoid doing it. And I want to help you and support you. And so I wonder, what's the hardest part about doing your history homework? Be very specific, right? History homework, or, because it may not just be homework in general, or your writing assignment. I notice that you really struggle when you have a writing assignment. Let's talk about that. What's the biggest struggle when you're doing your writing assignment? What's the hardest part of doing your writing assignment? And see if you get something. You may not. You might just get some yelling and some, I don't know. But you might get an answer that gives you a little bit of insight into what's happening. So it's important to look at our kids' behaviors through two lenses. And I say this often. We want to look at it through our parental lens, our typical lens, and then we want to look at it through the OCD lens, which does make it more exhausting as a parent who's raising a child with OCD, because we have to look at behaviors in two different ways. We have to kind of look at it from two different angles to make sure we're not missing something. I know at my house, There's a lot of defiance and a lot of opposition when it comes to leaving the house. And it can seem, and even the answers I'm given are often, it's boring. I don't want to go. I just want to stay here. I'm just comfortable. I'll do it tomorrow. When in reality, there's all these upsetting thoughts and fears related to anxiety and OCD that prevent them from leaving the house. And so if I took their answers at face value, then I would just see it as oppositional behavior, difficult behavior. And if I was to consequence it and say, if we don't leave the house right now, you lose electronics for the next 24 hours, I would not get a willing participant. I would get rage. I would get a child who would double down in their rage, and it wouldn't be pretty. And that's a clue that there's more going on than just opposition. And, the reason why I think kids explode and why traditional discipline backfires when it's not just defiance is because whatever you're going to threaten them with is 10 times more appealing than what OCD is threatening them with. And so you will not out-discipline typically OCD because OCD is so scary or so overwhelming that trumps any discipline you're going to throw at your child. And when faced with, I'm not going to have any electronics for 24 hours, or OCD says my mom is going to die, now I'm overwhelmed even more because I don't want either thing to happen. And now you've added another scoop of something else on my plate, and I'm feeling so overwhelmed. And so they escalate instead of de-escalate. When my child is having typical difficult behavior that all kids have, and I say, okay, well, if you're not down in 10 minutes, then you're going to go to bed at 9 instead of 10, it moves the dial. They get up. There is progress. Maybe not in that moment because it depends on how consistent you are. But in my house, my kids know if I say something, I mean it. There's built-in history of consistency. They know if I say it, it's going to happen. So even if I accidentally, say a consequence for something that is OCD related and I don't realize it, it won't work because even though my child knows that is legitimately going to happen and what she says is what happens, it won't matter. It won't matter because the threat of their anxiety and OCD is far worse than any threat that I can have. So that also helps me because I know in that moment, if I say, you need to be downstairs in 10 minutes or you're going to, go to bed at 10, and there's this huge meltdown, in that moment I know, oops, I missed something. That's with my kids. If you haven't been consistent with discipline and what you say doesn't always mean what you mean, or you have another parent that negates you, it won't be as clear cut for you because you'll have to start to be really consistent with your consequences if you do those at all. Everyone has a different parenting style to gauge whether it is defiance or OCD related. So let's talk about some of the key differences from oppositional behavior versus OCD-driven behavior. So with oppositional behavior, there is intentional, willful defiance. They are making a decision to defy you for whatever reason. It's boring, it's stupid, I don't want to, don't tell me what to do. I'll give you a good example. Last night, I was going to bed, and my 15-year-old son wanted to eat some ice cream. He's got ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and so any calories are good calories right now in this chapter of where we are with him. And so I was happy that he was going to eat ice cream because honestly, getting him to eat ice cream even is hard. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you have a child with ARFID, you are nodding and you totally get me. So it was in our deep freezer, so it was very frozen and it had some like ice on top. And he's like, can I get sick from freezer burn? And I'm like, no. And he's like, ice, it's like the mold of the freezer is the ice. I thought that was a weird observation. But anyway, he said, I'm going to put this in the microwave. And I said, do not put that in the microwave because I just instantly saw him putting it on for too long and like a puddle of like a sweet mess in my microwave, sticky mess. And so I said, don't do that. And then I went to go brush my teeth and I came back out and I heard the ding of the microwave and he put it in. And I said, why did you put it in there? I just told you not to do that. And he said, well, I wanted to and you don't control me. All right. Well, that was an oppositional behavior. There was no OCD related to that whatsoever. And we had a discussion about it. How like, yes, there's free will, but I'm still in charge of the house. And he's like, well, it's my ice cream. And I was like, technically not. And I said no. And you're still at an age where if I said no, then you need to respect that. But we were able to have this conversation. If it was OCD related or anxiety related, we wouldn't be able to have a civil conversation. And there would not be intentional willful defiance. So that was an example of just typical behavior. It's normal at that age to push boundaries and think that you're in charge of yourself. And it doesn't matter what your mom says, unfortunately. Another aspect of oppositional behavior is that it occurs across multiple settings. And so they might be oppositional at home and at school. This is more if we're dealing with oppositional defiant disorder, where they are having a hard time with authority. It may not occur across multiple settings if they don't have a difficult time with authority. But it's also less linked to specific triggers. And so there was no trigger with the ice cream. He just wanted to eat it, and he wanted to eat it quicker, and he wanted it melted. He wanted what he wanted, and he didn't want to do what I wanted. Now, if it's OCD-driven behavior, that is different. And so what you might find is it's triggered by a specific fear or obsession. So I know when I say we need to leave the house, that's a very specific trigger. Or if I say we need to go out to eat, that's a trigger. Or we need to go and have somebody come to our house anybody coming to our house for any period of time, that's a trigger. So I know there are specific triggers. It's normally or often accompanied by like anxiety or distress, right? He wasn't anxious or distressed about the ice cream. He just didn't understand why I wouldn't let him do it. When I say we need to leave and he's not moving or he's stuck doing his hair, that's distress. And when we push them or pressure them, they become overwhelmed and panicked. When it's defiance and just opposition, they become stubborn. We don't normally see the panic that we see when it is an OCD or anxiety-driven behavior. So just some red flags if it's OCD. The child's overwhelmed by distress, typically not anger. It might manifest as anger, but underneath that you can see the panic. And there's often patterns of avoidance or rituals in specific situations. So it's every time I ask them to take a shower, or every time I ask them to leave the house, or every time they have to go to school, you start to see a pattern. And sometimes they request reassurance or a ritual completion before complying. And so can you just wipe that off for me? Or can you just do this for me? Now, that's not always the case. Like when I'm trying to get my son out of the house, there's no request to do anything. He just wants to avoid. Just go without me. There's just a pure avoidance. But sometimes they want you to do something, whether they want you to wipe something down or they want you to participate in a compulsion in order for them to get unstuck. So that might be a sign as well. All right, let's take a break. And after the break, I'm going to talk to you about how to respond effectively when it is OCD and how to address this long-term so that you can be parenting the right thing, whether it is opposition or an OCD compulsion in disguise. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with like the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have that was desperately needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was like the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do like the exposures. Before it was like really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it, so it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
Welcome back. All right, so before the break, we talked all about why OCD is often misunderstood or labeled as opposition or defiance. Some really good concrete examples of how that can happen, some red flags and how to tell the difference. And now let's talk about how do you respond effectively? So pay attention for patterns, because the first step is going to be recognizing what is an OCD trigger versus opposition, which is what we talked about before the break. And so once you know, it doesn't mean that if it's OCD, they get a pass. That's an important thing. I think a lot of times parents hear the first half of what I talked about and they think, oh, she's going to tell me that if it's OCD, I need to just be understanding and let them have that behavior. And I'm not going to tell you that. Just because it's OCD doesn't mean they get to act however they want to act and there's no boundaries. Absolutely not. But I'm not going to approach it the same way as I did the ice cream, right? With the ice cream, I kind of let him have it at that point. I was like, whatever. It wasn't a battle I wanted to really have. We did talk about why it's important to listen to me and how it's disrespectful. But there are boundaries where my kids are defiant because they're in a developmental stage of pushing boundaries, and there are consequences. If I say, like, I'll give you a good one. Last night I said to my son, like, you need to be in bed by X, Y, and Z. And if you're not, then you're going to bed at this time tomorrow. And so that's a clear consequence. Sometimes I have a very strong line in the sand, or you need to wake up at this time. And if you're not up, logged into your class at this point, then you're going to go to bed at this point at night. Like, that's very powerful for my child because they want to stay up and they want to be online. But if you can recognize that it is OCD, you're going to approach that differently. I'm not going to draw these hard lines in the sand. I'm not going to say, just do it. You're being difficult. When he needs to leave the house or when I'm wanting him to leave the house, I'm not going to say, just hurry up, and like, just get in the car. You're being such a difficult person. I'm going to validate the struggle. And I'm going to say things like, I know it's hard for you to leave the house, but I appreciate you doing this. Now, that actually sometimes angers him. So maybe I wouldn't say that. It depends on your child. My other child would be fine with that. Everyone's different. And so I might say, I might actually just give him a lot of time and space because I know that just him getting ready and coming is a big ask. And so I'm not going to give him an opportunity to be defiant. I'm going to give him more space. If there's a big no, I'm not leaving, then I might, when he's calm, have a calm discussion about, I love you and leaving the house is important. And I might explain where I'm coming from and why I'm trying to help them. So validate their emotion, not the compulsion, and talk to them about why you're trying to help them. I know showers are hard for you. You told me that you get stuck in showers and you told me your routine and it sounds very long and hard. Let's talk about how we can help with that. Let's talk about how we can reduce those compulsions in the shower. And so language like that is important. And then you want to reduce your enabling of the OCD. So when we avoid helping our child complete rituals or avoid triggers, we are growing that beast bigger, even though in the short term, it seems to solve the problem. And so if, we say, I'm trying to think of an example. If we say, I will like let you know that you're not going to throw up when you leave the house, and you don't have to wear your green shirt that makes you feel like you're going to throw up. And, I can take your temperature before we leave to make sure that you're okay. I'm enabling the OCD by doing all of those rituals with them. And so we always want to do our part to reduce the accommodations that we're doing that support the OCD and set clear, compassionate boundaries. And so I know this is hard, and I appreciate how brave you're being in trying to do it anyway. Or I know this is hard, but we do need to go. And I know this is a struggle, but I also know that you can handle it. So those compassion statements with also the confidence that you believe they can handle it, even if you think they can't, is really important. It's important to avoid punishing avoidance. And I know that is really hard for some people because we have kids who are avoiding school. We have kids who are avoiding going to sleep. We have kids who are avoiding things that really impact all of us. But it's important to get to the core fear and identify the OCD theme and use ERP, exposure response prevention strategies instead. And I talk about bravery points and gamifying it and offering incentives to get to move the dial. That's much more effective than a punitive approach when it comes to OCD. And when we teach them gradual exposure, so if my child is stuck in the shower or is avoidant of the shower, we might you just need to sit in the bathroom for 5 minutes. Don't even take a shower. Or you just need to turn the water on and sit listening to the water. You don't have to go in. All right, and then you just have to go and put your toes in. Like small, gradual, manageable exposures is the key for the things that we're doing. With my son, it might be we won't go out every day. Maybe we'll go out every other day or every third day. Maybe we'll only go out for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Or maybe you only have to stay in the car, right? So addressing the thing that is driving the defiance underneath and getting to the root of the problem is the key, and not punishing or treating it in a typical parenting way, but treating it in an OCD way is the goal. And so when we are addressing the true issue, the thing that is actually fueling this defiant fire, we make progress. And not only do we make progress in the defiance, we make progress in the OCD, the thing that is actually driving everything underneath. So it's important for us to identify like what is driving the behavior. Is it typical or developmental defiance? Or is it OCD, where there's fear and panic behind it? Or there's intention and exerting their will to be independent, which might be more defiant. Look for patterns, right? So in my house, it's definitely leaving the house for my one child, going out to eat, having a stranger, or not even a stranger, having someone outside of our immediate family come to the house. Those are all triggers. And I will see more difficult behavior around those triggers. So what are those triggers for your child? Again, avoid punishment, use calm exposure strategies instead when you can, and get professional support. I think finding an OCD therapist is gold. And really, this is a symptom and just a byproduct of OCD. Just like last episode with meltdowns, these are byproducts of OCD. And when you're seeing the defiance because they feel so trapped and so overwhelmed, it's just a call to treat the OCD. And so reach out to NoCD at treatmyocd.com or find a therapist near you. NoCD does a lot of, they're everywhere. They truly are everywhere. So that's why they're an easy referral. But get that support so that you are able to address that. I also actually have a difficult behavior caused by anxiety and OCD course. That course is for you, and it's actually for your kids. So I have parent videos in that course, and I'll walk you through how to tell the difference between OCD and typical behavior, how to figure out the trigger, how to find out the core fear, how to develop calming tools, how to create zones in your house, and then how to get your kids to use the zones in your house, and then how to address the OCD or anxiety underneath, which is the key. So that course goes into much more detail than what we just covered today. And then what I did in that particular course, which I don't always do in all my courses, is I made a video for your kid or teen. So I have like a child's video, like for younger kids, and I have like a teen video where I'm talking kind of like this. so I'm not talking down to them. And so I explain a concept to you, and then you can show your child a video or your teen a video so that they can learn their own skills directly, which I thought was super cool. So if you want to check out that course, you can go to natashadaniels.com/difficult behavior course. That's natashadaniels.com/difficult behavior course. And I spell behavior like an American. So it's BEHAVIOR. So no U in there. You can check that out, and I will roll up my sleeves with you, and we will give your kids those tools directly. So I hope that you find that helpful. I hope that you find this podcast episode helpful. If you're enjoying my podcast in general, don't forget to hit a star and rate it. I greatly appreciate that. We are now back on Amazon and Audible. I guess we've been gone for 4 years. That's what happens when you have so much going on in your world that you don't check where your podcast is being streamed. So if you prefer to listen to my podcast on Audible or on Amazon Music, we are there now. We were there, but we were not up to date. And if there's anywhere else you want us streamed and you don't see us, just let us know at atparentingsurvivalhelp@yahoo.com. I really hope to see you over in my free series, Survival Tools for Parents Raising Kids with Anxiety and OCD. It's always a good thing. I love doing that series, I was going to say episode, because people just really like it and they get so much traction from it that it's always cool to do it. So register for free at atparentingsurvivalseries.com so you don't miss it. It is on demand, and so it will be going from, let me just quickly tell you, it'll be going from May 1st and it ends on May 9th. And so those videos will be up. So if you listen to this episode a little bit past May 1st, you can still catch it. So just check out atparentingsurvivalseries.com and register. All right, take care. And don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.